Hello, everyone. Get comfortable, folks, because today on AGS Stories, we have a gripping tale of betrayal, resilience, and justice that'll have you hooked from start to finish. Trust and loyalty are the foundations of any strong relationship, especially in marriage. But what happens when the person you trust the most plots to take everything you've worked so hard for? Today's story is about a self-made millionaire whose wife's shocking betrayal pushed him to the edge. She didn't just break his heart, she tried to destroy his life. But instead of crumbling, he fought back in the most brilliant way imaginable. Buckle up, because this is a story of heartbreak, strategy, and ultimate triumph. Let's dive into my wife's plot to steal my fortune and how I exposed her. David had spent over 2 decades pouring his blood, sweat, and tears into building his business empire. Starting with nothing but a dream and a relentless drive to succeed, he transformed a small garage operation into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. At 48 years old, he finally felt like he had achieved the life he'd always envisioned: a thriving company, a luxurious home, and a beautiful wife, Sophia, 15 years his junior, who seemed to be the perfect partner, or so he thought. Lately, things hadn't felt right. Sophia's behavior had changed in ways David couldn't ignore. She became distant, taking secretive phone calls at odd hours and disappearing for long stretches without explanation. She'd recently begun asking pointed questions about his finances, the kind she'd never shown interest in before. David's instincts, honed through years of business negotiations, told him something was wrong, but even he wasn't prepared for what he uncovered. One night, while Sophia was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. David hesitated, but couldn't shake the nagging feeling in his gut. Picking up the phone, his worst fears were confirmed. Messages from an unknown man revealed not only an ongoing affair, but a calculated plan to manipulate David into signing over his assets. The betrayal hit him like a freight train. He had given Sophia everything: his trust, his love, his wealth, and now she was scheming to take it all. After the initial wave of devastation, David's grief began to harden into something else: resolve. He realized that confronting Sophia outright would give her the chance to spin her web of lies even further. Instead, he decided to play the long game. He would fake a serious illness, checking himself into the hospital to observe her true intentions from the shadows. It was a gamble, but it was the only way to protect what he had built. David's heart burned with determination. If Sophia thought she could betray him and walk away with everything he had worked for, she was sorely mistaken. This time, he would be the one pulling the strings. David sat in the dim light of his study, the soft hum of his computer the only sound in the room. The glass of bourbon in his hand sat untouched on the desk, forgotten in the storm of emotion swirling inside him. He stared at the blinking cursor on the screen, unsure of how to put the chaos in his mind into words. Finally, he began typing, pouring his story into an online forum where people often shared their struggles and sought advice. "I never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am," David began. "I'm 48 years old, a self-made man who spent over 20 years building my business from scratch. I thought I had it all: a thriving company, a beautiful home, and a wife, Sophia, who I believed was my partner in life. But now, everything feels like a lie." David described how he had started noticing Sophia's unusual behavior: the late-night phone calls, the whispered conversations that stopped when he entered the room, and the sudden interest in the finances of the business she had never shown any curiosity about before. At first, he told himself he was overthinking. He wanted to believe in her, in the life they had built together. But doubts crept in, slowly chipping away at the trust he had in her. The moment he picked up Sophia's phone that fateful evening played over and over in his mind as he typed. He explained how he had found the messages between her and an unknown man. The texts were explicit, filled with affection for her lover and disdain for David. But what struck him like a dagger to the heart were the plans they were making. Detailed discussions about manipulating him into transferring assets, gaining control of his business, and eventually leaving him with nothing. Reading those messages felt like a physical blow, David admitted. I thought I might throw up. My chest tightened, my hands shook, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was calculated. This wasn't a simple affair. It was a cold, deliberate plot to destroy everything I've worked for and take it all for herself. David went on to reveal that the messages even outlined steps Sophia had already taken. She had met with lawyers, asking questions about the inheritance David had planned to leave to his nephews if he ever decided not to have children. She'd discussed ways to position herself as the rightful heir, and her lover had encouraged her every step of the way. The man had even called David a fool for trusting her so blindly. The weight of it all hit David in waves. He described sitting alone in the study, staring at her phone, his heart pounding as he reread the messages. Part of him wanted to march upstairs and confront her immediately. Another part of him felt frozen, paralyzed by the enormity of what he had uncovered. I wanted to scream, cry, and throw things, but none of that would solve this, he continued in his post. Instead, I forced myself to think. Sophia is clever, too clever. If I confront her now, she'll spin a web of lies and turn the situation in her favor. But if I wait, if I gather evidence and let her believe she's winning, I might be able to stop her before she ruins me. David shared how he came up with the idea to fake an illness. He had confided in his most trusted employee, Michael, who helped him craft a believable story. Michael was one of the few people David knew he could count on, and together they decided that David would check himself into a hospital for a supposed serious condition. The goal was to give Sophia the illusion of power, to see how far she would go when she thought he was vulnerable. It's a gamble, David admitted in his post, but I feel like it's the only way to get the proof I need to expose her. The last thing I want is to drag my business, my employees, and my reputation through a public scandal without solid evidence. I need advice. Am I making the right decision? Should I confront her now and risk her escalating her plans? Or should I keep gathering evidence and wait for the perfect moment to strike? David's post ended with an open plea to the community. He wanted to hear from others who had been in similar situations. He wanted to know how to handle the emotional turmoil that was tearing him apart. Has anyone else faced a betrayal like this? He wrote. How did you get through it? How do you stop yourself from letting anger consume you? I don't want her to win, but I also don't want to lose myself in the process. He hit post and leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. Within minutes, replies began pouring in. As the comments multiplied, David felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could find clarity in the collective wisdom of strangers. As David's post began to gain traction, the replies flooded in. Within hours, the thread was filled with advice, anecdotes, and emotional reactions from strangers who empathized with his situation. The online community rallied around him, offering support and a diverse range of perspectives. Some comments stood out, resonating with David as he read through them late into the night. Comment 1. Username, LegalEagle123. David, first off, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Betrayal on this level is devastating, and I admire your strength in staying calm enough to think strategically. My advice is to gather as much evidence as you possibly can before making any moves. This is especially important since Sophia is actively meeting with lawyers. Screenshot every text message, save every email, and document any suspicious behavior. Also, consult with a good attorney immediately. They'll help you secure your assets and ensure she doesn't get her hands on what's rightfully yours. Remember, the key to winning this kind of battle is staying one step ahead. David nodded as he read the comment. It echoed the plan he'd already put into motion, but also reminded him of the importance of securing legal expertise. He made a mental note to follow up with his lawyer first thing in the morning. Comment 2. Username, Trust No Fools. David, this is brutal, but you need to act fast. Confront her now. Freeze all your joint accounts, lock her out of anything connected to your business, and make sure she can't access your financial records. If you wait too long, she might make a move that's irreversible. People like Sophia don't stop until they get what they want, and by the time you have enough evidence, it could be too late. Take control now. Protect your business, your employees, and yourself. And honestly, I'd consider getting a private investigator involved if you haven't already. This comment sent a wave of anxiety through David. Was he waiting too long? Could Sophia outmaneuver him if he didn't act quickly? He shook his head, trying to calm the doubts creeping in. His plan relied on patience, but it was hard to ignore the urgency in comments like this one. Comment 3. Username, Been There Heartache. David, I've been where you are, and I want you to know you're not alone. My ex-husband cheated on me and tried to drain our savings behind my back. What worked for me was keeping calm and letting him think I didn't know. I hired a private investigator who uncovered everything, and when the time came, I confronted him with overwhelming evidence. He didn't have a leg to stand on. My advice? Stick to your plan. Pretend you're none the wiser, and watch what she does under pressure. People show their true colors when they think they've won. I know it's hard, but don't let her see your anger. Use her arrogance against her. This comment hit home for David. It reminded him of the value in patience and controlling his emotions. Sophia's confidence was her Achilles heel, and he could use it to his advantage. As David read through the hundreds of replies, he noticed a common thread in the advice. Preparation was key. Some urged immediate action, like freezing accounts and securing his business, while others advocated for a calculated approach, allowing Sophia to reveal the full extent of her schemes. Many commenters shared their own stories of betrayal, offering reassurance that David wasn't alone in his pain. David couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: grief over the betrayal, anger at Sophia's audacity, and a growing sense of determination to see this through. One comment in particular stuck with him. You're stronger than you think. She thinks she's playing you, but in the end, she's the one who's going to lose. With renewed resolve, David closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and prepared for what would come next. This wasn't just about protecting his assets anymore. It was about reclaiming his life and ensuring that Sophia would never take advantage of him again. David's hands trembled slightly as he logged back into the forum. It had been a week since he shared his story, and the responses had been overwhelming. Taking the advice of the community, he put his plan into action. Faking an illness was not something David had ever imagined himself doing, but desperation pushed him to take drastic measures. Now, he was updating the community with the results that left him simultaneously vindicated and horrified. I did it, David began. I followed your advice and pretended to fall seriously ill. I checked myself into a private hospital under the guise of needing extensive treatment for a supposed heart condition. Sophia took the bait almost immediately, and what I've learned since then is more disturbing than I ever expected. David described how Sophia's behavior changed almost overnight. Initially, she visited him at the hospital, bringing flowers and putting on a show of being the doting wife. But her visits were brief, often accompanied by long phone calls outside the room. By the second day, her demeanor shifted. She no longer feigned concern for his health, instead focusing on important financial matters that she insisted couldn't wait. She started making excuses to leave the hospital early, David wrote. At first, I thought she was just trying to maintain appearances, but then I overheard her speaking to someone on the phone. She was laughing, while her husband was supposedly gravely ill. David's post continued, describing how Sophia's actions escalated in his absence. She began frequenting his office, speaking to employees, and even arranging meetings with their financial advisor. On one occasion, she claimed that David had given her full authority to act on his behalf, citing his deteriorating condition. When confronted by his assistant, who questioned her motives, Sophia brushed it off, saying she was only trying to prepare for the inevitable. What stung the most, however, was what the private investigator uncovered. David revealed that he had hired someone to monitor Sophia's movements and record her conversations. The investigator captured a particularly damning exchange between Sophia and her lover during a dinner meeting at an upscale restaurant. She was openly discussing my last will as if I were already dead, David wrote. She told him that once the paperwork was finalized, the business would be in her name. She even joked about what she would do with the money, buying a yacht, a new house, and who knows what else. The man had the audacity to laugh and say, "Poor David won't even see it coming." The weight of these revelations crushed David. The woman he had once loved, the woman he had shared his life with, was not only betraying him, but actively plotting to dismantle everything he had worked for. Watching the recordings was like twisting a knife in his own heart. I can't describe the mix of emotions I've been feeling, he admitted. There's anger, of course, but also a deep sadness. How did it come to this? How did I not see who she truly was? It's like the Sophia I thought I knew never existed. David detailed the steps he had taken to protect himself in the meantime. He had frozen their joint accounts, revoked any access she had to company finances, and ensured that all legal documents remained under his control. However, he knew that this wasn't enough. Sophia was smart and manipulative, and she still believed she was one step ahead of him. The community's advice had proven invaluable so far, and David was once again turning to them for guidance. "Here's where I need your help," he wrote. "I have enough evidence to confront her now. The texts, the recorded conversations, the meetings with my financial advisor, it's all there. But part of me wonders if I should wait, let her dig an even deeper hole for herself. Every day, I feel like she's getting bolder, and I worry she might try to do something drastic if I act too soon. What do you think? Should I expose her now, or let her keep thinking she's winning?" David's plea for advice was raw and unfiltered. He laid bare his inner turmoil, questioning his own decisions and wondering if his strategy was sound. "I also want to thank everyone who has supported me so far," he added. "Your advice has kept me grounded, even when I felt like everything was falling apart. But I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this charade going. Seeing her every day, knowing what she's doing behind my back, it's like living in a nightmare I can't wake up from." David's update struck a nerve with the online community. Comments began pouring in almost immediately, many commending him for his strength and resilience. Others reiterated the importance of timing, urging him to hold off on confronting Sophia until he had enough evidence to ensure a decisive victory. But the post also revealed the toll this ordeal was taking on him. For all his strategic thinking, David was still a man grappling with betrayal and heartbreak. The online forum had become more than just a place for advice. It was a lifeline, a reminder that he wasn't alone in his struggle. As he refreshed the page, waiting for the next wave of responses, David felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he was closer to the end of this nightmare than he realized. All he needed was the right moment to strike. David sat in his hospital bed, scrolling through the flood of comments on his latest update. Despite the emotional toll of the last few weeks, he found solace in the support and advice pouring in from strangers who genuinely seemed invested in his plight. Their words were both a reminder that he wasn't alone and a source of clarity amid the chaos. He reflected on the position he was in. The evidence he had gathered was damning. Texts, recorded conversations, and financial manipulations laid out clearly. Yet, the thought of confronting Sophia sent a wave of unease through him. She was manipulative, quick on her feet, and unafraid to play dirty. One wrong move, and she could spin this in her favor. The timing had to be perfect. Comment 1. Username, Truth and Tactics. David, I've been following your story, and first off, I have to say, you're handling this incredibly well. I know how tempting it must be to confront her now, but trust me, timing is everything. Let her think she's in control for just a little longer. The moment she tries to force a financial transfer or take some irreversible action, you'll have her exactly where you want her. Make sure to involve your lawyer when you do confront her. Having legal protection and witnesses will be crucial to ensuring she doesn't try to twist the narrative against you. David appreciated this advice. It aligned with his instincts, but seeing it reinforced by others gave him confidence in his strategy. He couldn't afford to let emotions cloud his judgment. Sophia's arrogance and overconfidence would be her downfall, but only if he let her reveal just how far she was willing to go. Comment 2. Username, No More Betrayals. David, I went through something similar with my ex-wife, and I know how overwhelming it feels. I made the mistake of acting too soon, and it backfired because I didn't have enough evidence. You already have a strong case, but letting her dig a deeper hole could make the outcome even more satisfying. One thing I'd suggest, when you do confront her, make it public or involve trusted witnesses. Her type thrives on manipulation, and she'll do everything she can to spin the story. Exposing her in front of others will ensure she can't weasel her way out. David nodded, taking mental notes. A staged confrontation was something he hadn't considered in detail before, but the logic behind it made sense. If Sophia's lies unraveled in front of witnesses, she wouldn't have a chance to deny the truth. As he read through the comments, David felt a renewed sense of determination. The overwhelming consensus was clear: wait, prepare, and strike only when the time was right. It wasn't easy to suppress his emotions and bide his time, but the thought of watching Sophia's world collapse under the weight of her own greed gave him the strength to endure a little longer. For the first time in weeks, David allowed himself to smile. The end was drawing near, and justice was within his grasp. David sat in the conference room of his company, his heart pounding in his chest. The air felt heavy with anticipation, every second stretching into eternity. This was it, the culmination of weeks of planning, emotional turmoil, and sleepless nights. Today Sophia would finally be exposed for who she truly was, and David would reclaim control of his life. Across the table, Sophia looked radiant, wearing a tailored dress and her signature smug smile. She had no idea what was about to hit her. Beside her sat her lover, a man David now knew far too much about, thanks to the private investigator. The man's arrogance mirrored Sophia's, as though they both believed they were on the brink of victory. David's lawyer, Mr. Franklin, sat beside him, calm and composed. A few of David's most trusted employees, including Michael, were also in the room, acting as witnesses. This was more than just a legal meeting. It was the stage where Sophia's lies would come crashing down. David took a deep breath, steadying himself as he slid the transfer papers across the table. "Here it is," he said, keeping his voice steady. "This document transfers partial ownership of the company to you, just as you requested. All it needs is your signature." Sophia's eyes gleamed as she picked up the pen. "Finally," she said, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "This is the right decision, David. You're doing what's best for the business, and for us." David said nothing, watching as she signed her name with a flourish. Beside her, her lover leaned back in his chair, smirking. The moment the pen left the paper, David felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The trap was set. Mr. Franklin reached for the papers and adjusted his glasses. "Thank you, Sophia," he began, his voice cool and professional. "Now that the documents are signed, let me walk you through what you've just agreed to." Sophia's confident expression faltered for the first time. "What do you mean?" she asked, glancing between David and the lawyer. Franklin opened the document, pointing to a specific clause. "This agreement includes a detailed outline of your infidelity, as well as your attempts to manipulate Mr. Harper into transferring his assets. It also nullifies any claim you might have to the company, effective immediately." Sophia's face drained of color. Her hands trembled as she snatched the papers back, frantically flipping through them. What is this?" she stammered, her voice rising. David leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "It's everything you've done, Sophia. The texts, the phone calls, the meetings with your lover. All of it is documented here. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I'd let you walk away with everything I've worked for?" Her lover, previously smug and composed, now looked panicked. "What is he talking about?" he demanded, turning to Sophia. "Shut up!" Sophia snapped, her mask of composure completely shattered. Franklin continued, unfazed by the chaos unfolding before him. "We've also collected evidence of your attempts to access company funds and your conversations about manipulating Mr. Harper's last will. It's all here, Sophia. And let me be clear, this isn't just a divorce matter. We're pursuing legal action for fraud and attempted coercion." Sophia's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. David could see the realization dawning on her face. She had lost. "You thought you were in control," David said, his voice calm but firm. "You underestimated me, Sophia. You thought I was blind to what you were doing, but I've been watching you this whole time. And now, everyone sees the truth." Sophia's lover stood abruptly, muttering something about not wanting to be involved, but Michael blocked the door. "Sit down," he said coldly. "You're not going anywhere." The meeting ended with Sophia in tears, her lover avoiding eye contact, and David feeling a sense of relief unlike anything he had experienced before. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he could finally breathe. The fallout was swift. David filed for divorce the following day, ensuring that Sophia was left with nothing. The court granted him full control of the business, and Sophia was ordered to pay legal fees for her malicious actions. Her lover disappeared from the picture entirely, unwilling to face the humiliation of their failed plot. In the weeks that followed, David began to rebuild his life. The weight of Sophia's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined him. His employees rallied around him, offering support and encouragement as he focused on growing the company. One day, while meeting with a business consultant to discuss expansion plans, David met Emma, a kind and intelligent woman who radiated warmth. Their connection was instant, and over time, Emma became a source of strength and joy in David's life. With Emma by his side, David felt a sense of hope and possibility he hadn't known in years. She encouraged him to focus on the future, reminding him that his best days were still ahead. One evening, as David stood on the balcony of his home, watching the sunset with Emma, he reflected on everything he had endured. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the fight for justice, it had all brought him to this moment. "You've come a long way," Emma said, slipping her hand into his. David nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I have, and I couldn't have done it without the people who stood by me." As the sun dipped below the horizon, David felt a sense of peace. Sophia's greed and lies had been her undoing, but his resilience had been his salvation. For the first time in years, he felt truly free, ready to embrace the future with open arms. As David sat in his office, the warm glow of the setting sun streaming through the windows, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. It had been a long, grueling battle, one filled with betrayal, heartbreak, and countless sleepless nights. But in the end, justice prevailed, and David had come out stronger than ever. "If there's one thing I've learned from this experience," David began, his voice steady but thoughtful, "it's to always trust your instincts. When something feels off, don't ignore it. I made that mistake early on, convincing myself that Sophia's behavior was just a phase. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Trusting yourself is the first step to protecting everything you've worked so hard for." David paused, his mind replaying the critical moments that had defined his fight for justice. "Another lesson I want to share is the importance of safeguarding your assets," he continued. "It's not something most of us think about, especially when it comes to loved ones. But life has a way of surprising us. Whether you're married, in a partnership, or running a business, having legal protections in place is crucial. If I hadn't been prepared, Sophia might have succeeded in her plans." He leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "And lastly, don't go through tough times alone. I couldn't have done this without the support of my lawyer, my employees, and even strangers who gave me advice when I needed it most. Surround yourself with people you trust, people who will stand by you when everything feels like it's falling apart." David's story was one of resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome even the darkest of times. He wanted to remind others that no matter how bleak a situation might seem, there is always a way forward. "If you take anything away from my story," David said, "let it be this: you are stronger than you think. Life will test you, but those challenges can make you stronger. You can reclaim your life, no matter how much someone tries to take from you. Justice is possible, and moving on is the best way to take back your power." He closed the video with a heartfelt smile, his eyes filled with gratitude for the journey that had brought him to this moment. "Now, I'd love to hear from you," he said, leaning slightly closer to the camera. "Have you ever faced a betrayal that felt insurmountable? How did you find the strength to overcome it? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to read them and connect with you." David ended with a warm invitation to his viewers. If my story inspired you or gave you hope, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe to AGS Stories for more tales of resilience, justice, and empowerment. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. As the video faded out, David felt a profound sense of closure. His story wasn't just about what he had lost. It was about everything he had gained: strength, clarity, and a renewed purpose. And now he hoped his journey could inspire others to find their own paths to healing and triumph.